now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
A little bit low because my throat is killing me. You guys know how it is. You got toddlers and kids. They bring home everything that they get to you, and sometimes you end up catching it. So this is what happened. The baby was out sick on, those glasses. She was out sick on Friday. And to be honest, by Friday, I was starting to feel that my throat was sore as well. So I got some hot piping tea here in my CMR mug. I'm waiting for it to cool down a little bit. So can you guys hear me okay? And I've got water. Hopefully that'll be enough to soothe my throat and get me through the show. But you know, I don't like to miss a show if I can help it. So good morning to Melita. So much happened over the weekend that we are going to be discussing. We do have a guest that will be joining us here around 8 o'clock. So we'll do a weekend recap before we are joined by our guest. And then we'll find out about this project in Cayman Brac, which has been described by some other media as an air base. And we'll see what that's all about. So stay tuned for that. So how is everyone? How was your weekend? I trust you guys had a good one. Mine was pretty good despite this, which, as you guys know, tends to get worse at night. You know, night times are always when you feel the most agitated. And it was an eventful weekend in the sense that there was a lot that happened, and I was just really, really surprised at what news I woke up to on Saturday. So let's talk about that bit of information first. So good morning to Miss Morna. Why does it looks a little extra dark in here today? Good morning to Anna, Olivia, and Cassidy, and Siobhan are all here for the discussion. Miss Beulah, thank you so much. Lime juice and honey. Yes, Cassidy, I'm doing all of the usual remedies for sure. I'm a believer in garlic, just eating raw garlic whenever I get sick. And so sometimes I'll start a regimen like as soon as I feel a sore throat, because I find for me, it always seems to start for the most part as a sore throat. And so I just start eating raw garlic, almost like taking a pill. So instead of taking a pill, I'll take raw garlic and I just swallow it chase it with water. And garlic is actually hot, like it's spicy when you eat it raw. And yeah, so I've been doing that. I haven't done my bit for the morning yet. So I will, like I said, this tea is lemon, honey, and chamomile tea. And I've added some extra fresh honey to it. A lot of you may not know this, but my husband comes from a little bit of a farming background, and his dad, before he passed away, obviously he passed away in March, but he actually has or had honeybees. So he farmed honeybees, and we would get an endless supply of fresh honey sent from Jamaica, oftentimes more than we could use. So we still have honey here from his batch. So he had sent us honey before COVID, and we still have a couple jars of honey. So I make sure that I put some of that in my sorry, in my tea. So there you have it. So yeah, what happened over the weekend? Gosh, it was shocking to find out that a 19-year-old young man breached quarantine for the second time. Now, the first time the quarantine was breached, we know that it was at a government facility, and government is currently using 2 facilities. Now, you know, here in CMR, we try to flush out the truth. That's what we're all about, folks, and people don't always like it. But as those old people used to say, the truth will set you free. And so we I heard about the breach. Obviously, government said, "Oh, there's a breach," blah blah. I think before we heard about the breach, we actually saw or had received photos of an incident in Prospect. Now, I have certain sources in government that I contacted, and I said, what's going on at this house? Like, I've gotten this photo of a potential breach. And I feel like, based on the photo and what we could see in the photo, and you guys remember I showed you the photo last week, I felt like, okay, this is clearly a breach. I mean, this isn't something else that's going on here. So do you guys remember this? I'm like, this is the COVID breach team. Like, this is what this looks like. Now, what we did not realize, we being the public, is that what had happened is the young man who had breached quarantine was being moved from the government facility to his house in Prospect. And this is where that was happening. So when this photo was sent to us on last week, Monday, and we started to ask questions, it was, one of those things where it was like, this looks like a quarantine breach situation, but when we're asking government, we're being told, no, it's not a quarantine breach. Well, as you guys recall, that on midweek, I got a phone call that says, okay, if government is saying that this location isn't a quarantine breach, then there's something else going on here, because at the end of the day, there is a security guard at this house 24/7. I told you guys this, I think, on Thursday or Friday, ironically enough. So I thought, let me go by and check this out. So when I went by the residence, I recognized the residence as one belonging to a senior civil servant. And I thought, oh, see the car parked right there? Inside that car was a security guard. Of course, he's professional. He's not going to talk to you and tell you anything. So I contacted my sources. I saw he had on a uniform for Security Center. I contact my sources outside of Security Center, and I say, hey, do you know what's going on? They said, let me check. So, people are interconnected. It's a small country. It's a small world.
Motion detected at the front door.
And they came back to say that, and this was in quotes, quarantine person escape. So I knew that this was connected to the person who had escaped. And when I started asking questions about that, my government source, and when I say that they're source, they don't give me any, they don't really give me a whole lot of information. Like, sometimes they clarify something. If it's gossipy and it's looks bad in the civil service, they're like, no, it didn't happen like that. So I was asking them questions about, what's really going on here? And they're like, well, because I said, I know a government official is at that house, a government worker. And they said, we said that the person breached isolation at a government facility. Now, that's kind of to throw me off the trail. And I'm like, yes, I'm aware that you said that. But there's a bit of a mystery here. And they said, is there a mystery? So they were being very coy, kind of, working around the issue a bit. Well, call the devil a liar, folks, because Saturday morning I wake up, and one of the first bits of news that I get is the fact that a 19-year-old young man has breached quarantine. And not only has he breached quarantine, but this is his second time. And I go, wow. Now it all comes together. Now the puzzle and the mystery, which I was told there's no mystery here, the mystery is finally solved. And we know that the first time he breached quarantine was at least the Monday before. At least that's when they discovered he had breached quarantine, I guess, or found him. And then less than a week later, on Friday evening, he had breached quarantine yet again. And of course, the first source I got, I said, this sounds interesting. The age started to match in terms of, I knew that this other young man was 19 because his mom was bragging on social media about how she was preparing his meals for quarantine. So I knew that he was in quarantine. There's a photo of him wearing his mask, which she put on her social media page. And the daughter, who's 10 years old, was also in the photo with her legs kind of over her brother. So now I'm thinking, I guess the whole family must be in quarantine. So he got out a second time on Friday evening, decided that he wanted to get out and go to the gym, which is the most bizarre thing ever, to be quite honest. He doesn't dress appropriately for the gym, so he had on flip-flops. So when he got to the gym, they were like, we're not letting you in. So he got into the building, but he wasn't able to get to the gym part and start like working out and stuff because the gym staff said, oh no, you're not wearing proper attire, so you can't do that. And he was sent away. Within the hour, the authorities are contacting them saying, oh, we think we have a young man who's breached quarantine. Have you seen this young man? So of course, naturally, they have to start sanitizing right away. So the first message I got about him and this breach was Saturday morning at about, I'm just trying to see how early it was. It's pretty early in the morning. At about 9:45. And then not long after that, I got a second call from a second call from another source, even more reliable than the first, because, you know, I have to be so careful with my sources. And this source is like top of the food chain kind of source. The first source, you know, they gave me certain information, but they've never given me anything that was like earth shattering before like this. I'm thinking, and they're relying on another source. So, you know, I have to, that's too far removed. So I've got to really cross my T's and dot my I's on that one. So, all right, well, when the second source called and said, hey, I've got some news for you, I go, oh, yes, there's been a 19-year-old, and the rest is history, as they say. So they basically confirmed the bit of information that I had. And I said, I'm glad you called me because obviously I know exactly what's going on here now. So good morning to Larry and Barbara, Lizette. As I said earlier, my voice is a little bit strained this morning, fighting off. It feels like a little bit of a head cold and really bad sore throat. That's the worst of it. So, yes, good folks. So obviously by then I knew exactly who the 19-year-old was and so on. I said, let me wait in terms of identifying him until the authorities confirm. So we did put up the initial story to say, hey, a 19-year-old has breached quarantine, and not once, but twice now in less than a week, twice that we know about. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. And so this is really, really concerning. So the story goes out, the first story goes out, and everybody's like, oh, wow, this is crazy, unbelievable. And, you know, the community starts talking. How is this possible? How do you breach quarantine twice from two different locations? One at a government facility, As a result of that breach, they have increased the number of guards at the location, because obviously if a 19-year-old who probably isn't all that savvy can crawl out of a window with bed sheets or whatever it was he did and leave quarantine, surely a more savvy individual could do the same thing or worse. Then they move him to his house and he does the exact same thing with a security guard sitting right there. Whew. Honestly, you can't make this stuff up. I guess the security guard might be having some questions to answer. I don't know if he was not really paying attention. You can't sit in your car. I mean, I get that during the day, I'm sure it's hot and whatever, but when you have someone who's obviously a flight risk, you've got to be up and moving about and checking the perimeter. You know what I'm saying? And then I do have some questions for parents in a situation like this. Now, if you knew that you had a teenager, and by the way, the second article that we did then later on Saturday evening, we did name the young man as Aaron Montemayor. Here is young Aaron. He's only 19 years old. And this is a picture of him, ironically enough, packing his suitcase and so forth. I don't know if that was this trip or if this was another trip. Atlas says private security. What? I'm assuming that private security is being paid for by the people of the Cayman Islands because he's already escaped once. My assumption is that in order for them to approve him to stay at the house, and they have indicated that there's quote unquote special circumstances. They haven't said what those special circumstances are, but I'm guessing in order for him to be able to get approval with these special circumstances to now stay at home, that it is now a situation of government saying, well, for this to happen, we're going to pay for and have a security guard at your house 24/7. And that was probably one of the conditions of approving him to move from the government facility to home. Now, I'm perplexed by this, to be honest, because normally it's the other way around where people are breaching the home facilities and they're being moved to a private facility, which they then have to pay for. Obviously, this is a Caymanian young man, so he's not having to pay for the government facility at all. And moving him to home security, I'm not quite sure how much more secure the authorities thought that would have been. Because in all honesty, you know, you're only as secure as the weakest link, as they say. Now, I don't want to parent shame anyone or mom shame anyone, but it did get me to thinking as parents how we are really controlling our children. Now, obviously a 19-year-old is technically an adult, but if they still live in your household, they are, you know, still part of the family. They have to follow your rules. And I don't know what conversations, I mean, so many questions are going through my mind in terms of what conversations did this mother have with her son who was coming home probably for Christmas break? Do you understand how serious COVID is? Do you understand what a breach can do? And it is our understanding. Now, government, I want to be very clear about this. Government would never confirm the status of an individual. But again, our more than reliable multiple sources have said that this young man is COVID positive. This is like a bomb drop. This is even worse of a situation than any of us could anticipate. And given that situation, and I don't know if that's the special circumstance that government is referring to, allowing him to go into his home in order to, you know, complete the rest of his quarantine procedure, and then having him escape for a second time on Friday is beyond shocking. And I thought about it. I have a 4-year-old. Thank God right now, she's not any older than that, right? Teenagers we know are a handful. Sometimes you do your best and they still turn out to be behavioral problems, real little hooligans, Although in my opinion, 95% of those cases, it's something in the environment that's going on with the child, and it's something with the parenting system as well. So how do you keep a child inside? You would have planned ahead knowing that, right, I'm going to go pick up my child, which looks like this is exactly what happened based on the photos that were on social media. And you see this kid coming back. She probably knows he's a little bit rebellious. Some of you commented on social media that he's always been a little bit of a rebellious kid. And that being the case, I would have certainly gotten, even if you don't have a proper alarm system, when I was in wherever he goes to school, Utah, Florida, wherever, I would have picked up a little security set to put on the doors and windows that every time you open a door and window, I'm going to know. Let's just be honest here, because you need to keep this kid inside of your house. Now, what is even more puzzling to me is when the authorities showed up to allow him to home quarantine on the Monday. So when this happened last week, Monday, why wouldn't they have taken additional steps to ensure that the perimeter of the house was secure, not just in terms of having a guard stationed out front? That is one option, yes. But as we can see, that didn't work out too well. So at the end of the day, I do think that the authorities, Travel Time, Cayman, are not really thinking through the process of people home quarantining. This is a big house, and there's sides to the house and the back of the house. And as you can see, there are windows, lots of windows. And apparently what this young man did was he climbed out of a window. Second story at that. So he really wants to get out. Now, after young Aaron got out, obviously the authorities were able to pick him up again. And we had a number of persons who, once the second story went up, said, OMG, I saw this young man during the week at Cotton Club. And I said, what? Let me tell you exactly what was said to me on Saturday evening when the second story went up. Now, the irony of it is he has a 10-year-old sister. And at some point, his 10-year-old sister took to TikTok, did a video of her brother, about her brother missing. And quite funny enough, she had some choice words about the situation. Now, I'm aware that our guest is waiting for a part 2. So I'm going to try to wrap this up here as quickly as I can. But listen to what the sister has to say. And this video was received late on Saturday, before we published the follow-up story identifying him. Now, let me just say one thing about the identification process. Everybody else that has breached quarantine that we have known who they are, we have made them jackass of the day, and we have identified them. This young man, because of his age and youthfulness, and probably just being a little bit silly, we have not made him a jackass of the day, although many of you are of the opinion that he is. But we have still named him because I think that we need to be fair. If we're going to name one, I can't sit back and say, well, now that it happens to a Caymanian is the one who breaches the quarantine, all of a sudden, I don't want to name this person. That would not have been just and equitable and fair in any manner. So let's have a look at his sister's video. She's 10 years old, and this is her on TikTok.
Hello, if you're from Cayman, please stay. My brother has COVID, and he was supposed to stay in quarantine, in isolation at the house for 2 weeks. He jumped out a window upstairs. I don't know how he did that, and he's not dead, but hopefully he's not dead, so that's good. Please get the lookout out of him. His name is Aaron Montemayor. Well, his full name is Aaron Ronaldo Montemayor. If you find any clues about him, please comment or DM me or something, cause he's going to jail, cause yeah, he escaped isolation, and just please ask someone if they know him, like, please. Thank you.
So a 10-year-old, first of all, do tell me why a 10-year-old has access to TikTok or even a phone, but that's a whole other discussion. So she confirms that he has COVID. She obviously confirms his name and that he has escaped out of a window. So she kind of confirmed everything that we already knew. I'm sure talking about brother and sisterly rivalry, that's probably not a good week that the two of them are going to be having living in the same household at the moment. But there are people, like I said, who are contacting us saying, now that we know who he is, and this is what someone said to me on late Saturday. So at about 7:50 or so, someone says he was by Cotton Club either Wednesday or Thursday night around everybody. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding? And they said, no, he was. And I said, are you sure it was him? Because I mean, a lot of kids look the same, you know? And this person says, I'm telling you, he spoke to me. Yes, I told him. I know him, sorry. Melinda's son, and these effing people are crazy. He said that he had just gotten out of quarantine. I was like, okay, cool. And now we're hearing that he has COVID? What on earth? So there are people who are concerned. And apparently this was not the only person who made mention of the fact that they saw him at Cotton Club. Other people actually saw or said that on social media as well. So now there are others of you who may have been at Cotton Club, and you need to contact public health. So they have said they've done contact tracing. I have always said contact tracing is a little bit of a joke because contact tracing relies on the individual who has proven that they have no regard for quarantine rules to then tell you where they have been. Let me give you one brief example, and then we're going to pull in Mr. Miles' new love and talk about this air base on the Brac. We understand it's not quite an air base, but Mr. Miles is going to give us all the details on that. But here's the thing, right? So if they go to Aaron now and they say, Aaron, okay, so you told us that you went to the gym. What else did you do? What if Aaron neglects to say that he didn't walk to the gym? He actually had someone pick him up because the gym is not necessarily very close to his house. So the chances of him walking there are pretty slim to none. So he had someone pick him up that he doesn't know. Maybe the person saw him and said, oh yeah, I know your mommy, Caymanians, whatever. They pick him up and they gave him a ride. And for 10, 15 minutes, he's in their vehicle getting a ride to the gym. Close quarters, sitting right next to them in the passenger seat, and they're in the driver's seat. He neglects to say that. He's like, oh, I walked to the gym. He hasn't been the most honest kid, sneaking out of quarantine more than once. So it's not without possibility that he could have stopped other places. What if he stopped by a friend's house on the way to the gym? Who knows? And this is, again, where contact tracing has its holes, because at the end of the day, you're relying on someone to tell you, where did you go? Who did you see? What did you do? Just like with the previous breach at South Sand Beach, the 6 additional persons who got put in quarantine, we know that Gabby and others were told by Travel Time that they were fine. They didn't need to go into quarantine. And the following day, she contacted them and said, hold on, other people who are under the tent with me have gone into quarantine. Are you sure I don't need to quarantine? And then they changed their minds. And in that 24-hour period, she could have been grocery shopping, at a house party, hanging out with her grandma, So this ongoing concern about the potential spread of COVID, community spread, again, is a real concern when we have these types of things happening. All right, folks, 146 of you are tuned in, and I know that you are here to meet Mr. Miles. We're going to speak to Mr. Miles now, and then we'll come back to some of your comments later on. I do see your comments, and I see that most of you are of the opinion that he should have been named Jackass of the Day based on his behavior. And it really is shocking. But let's see if we can change the discussion. Good morning to Miles New Love. What a name. I must admit, when I first saw that name, I thought, that's an interesting name. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sandra. How are you?
I'm good. I got a little bit of a sore throat this morning, so I got my CMR mug and some chamomile and honey tea going. So I trust that you had a good weekend.
We did, thank you.
So Mr. Miles is the CEO of a company called, is it pronounced Daggaro? Is that the correct?
Daggaro, yeah.
Daggaro, okay. So Daggaro is, if you check out their website, it says that they're in the business of saving and protecting lives through aviation and information. And they offer a number of different services. But they made headlines here locally last week when we heard that they were going to have an Air Force base or an air base or something in Cayman Brac. And a lot of you were shocked to read that in the Compass. And I think if my sources were correct, that the Compass actually put the story out before the folks at Daggaro even knew that they had gotten approval. But you guys know how this goes, right? I mean, if you go to the planning meeting, obviously, if you have sources like most media houses in Cayman, you can get news ahead of maybe the people who should be getting it first. So that information was made public, and they called it an air base. And that's one of the first things, Miles, that I would like to discuss, because I understand that the truth of the matter is that it's actually not an air base. So do you want to clarify for us exactly what you have received planning approval for on Cayman Brac?
Absolutely. So effectively, what we're doing at Cayman Brac is putting in 2 aircraft hangar facilities that are connected to the main runway. That is all. I think the sensationalized media reports of the bases were just completely out of line with what we were doing. They're 2 hangars to house helicopters. That is it.
Okay. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes, right? So I see that your services include everything from disaster management, medical evacuation, contract ISR services, and it says specialized air cargo and aviation logistics. So you cover quite a couple broad areas, right?
Correct.
What is it that you intend to do with this facility, this hangar on Cayman Brac?
Absolutely. So Cayman Brac is a strategically important location in the region, as we're able to, it shortens our reach out to neighboring countries that may be affected by disasters or medical evacuations. It allows us to get all the way to the United States. It allows us to go out to the Bahamas and et cetera. So the Cayman Brac is one of those unique places that's right in the middle of the Caribbean basin, and gives an extended range for our helicopters. That's all.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow. it's a simple
geographic location. That's it. Nothing more than that.
So of course, you know that when people saw the article, there were all sorts of stories in circulation, as we say here on the Mall Road. And that's why I thought it was so important to invite you on, Miles. I appreciate you accepting the invitation to just explain what it is, because this seems so incredibly simple. I mean, I had people saying to me, oh, well, wait and see, like who actually owns this company. There has to be some political connection. And, they've got contracts, defense contracts with the US government, and what's next? And it's just like, whoa, the conspiracy theorists have begun in terms of what's going to be going on there at that facility. So 2 things we've clarified. The most important one, it's not a base, it's just an air hangar for storage of what sort of equipment are you going to be storing there? What sort of planes? And we've
it's actually just, it'll be primarily storing the equipment for the helicopters, or the staging of equipment for disasters, whether that be water purification, equipment, rations for, delivering into a location, generators, all the things that you need for essential services when you walk into a disaster. And obviously the spare parts for the helicopter itself. The picture that you're showing here is again, what is termed a UH-60. or commonly known as a Black Hawk. This is the one that's been used for California fires. You can see the water bucket or the water system at the bottom of the helicopter. These aircraft are commonly now being used throughout the world. And the main reason they're being used is that they are probably one of the best helicopters in the world. The US Coast Guard that you're showing a picture of uses these helicopters extensively. And the reason for that is its payload capacity, i.e. can lift a lot of equipment under a sling, which is another cargo package underneath the aircraft. Its range is about 450 nautical miles. So, put that in context, we can literally fly from Cayman Brac all the way to mid-coast of Florida and refuel, come back. And if you remember during Hurricane Dorian, it was the US Coast Guard with these exact helicopters that were the first on the scene because of their range and weather capability.
Wow. And I mean, these look like, I'm not an aircraft expert, but they do look like pretty amazing pieces of, aviation equipment. So they're well equipped to do their job.
Yeah, we selected this aircraft. We looked at various aircraft before we came to the conclusion that the UH-60 was the best aircraft for the job. These are one of the most safest aircrafts on the market today. They've got over 40 million flight hours behind them. They're a well-known aircraft from a maintenance standpoint, so there's not really a problem that we would ever have that hasn't already been occurred beforehand. And again, their all-weather capability is, again, unmatched. So you're able to, fly through storms and etc. Obviously not through the storm, but around it in adverse weather conditions. And our flight crews are well trained for this capability.
Nice. All right. So we do have some questions that are coming in for you. One of the questions, or obviously the points that was made in the Compass article, is that you did have some objections to the facility being put in the Brac. So give us an idea. A lot of us who live in Grand Cayman, the Brac is one of our 3 sister islands, but we don't necessarily know a whole lot about the Brac. So where exactly is this storage facility located?
Okay. So it's when you approach the airport to land, we're actually on the left-hand side, down the same end that you actually do the touchdown point on the runway. That location was selected out of only a very few options that we could consider. And at the end of the day, once we had extensively discussed this with the airport authority, the Cayman Aviation Authority, and the government, this point was selected as the best option for us. It further was selected because the other location that we looked at was not suitable from a community aspect. It was the community park, and we were not interested in disturbing that. So this came down to the only location that could be quickly stood up before the next hurricane season, and become operational as quickly as possible.
Okay. Now, thank you so much, Walton, for confirming that you've logged in and you're listening. I'm just sort of thinking about this, Miles. This year 2020 has been the most amazing year on so many different fronts. And of course, it has been the most active hurricane season that we've ever had on record. We had more named storms than ever. We had to go into the Greek alphabet to start naming storms. And we had 2 Category 5 storms back to back within less than 2 weeks of each other that hit Honduras, Nicaragua, Central America area. And so those countries were obviously devastated. Would your facility be looking at, for example, assisting countries like that during natural disasters? Or what sort of, give us an idea of what sort of rescues and missions you've been involved in?
So if the government of country A, let's call it that, requested our assistance, and we were available, obviously, we would then be able to take off from Cayman Brac and land in these locations. So if you look at Nicaragua and Honduras, we'd be able to get down there relatively quickly, probably in about 4 to 6 hours. With that, we could bring some of the essential services for the operation. So that would be water purification systems. We already have 3 systems that will be arriving in Grand Cayman to be shipped back over to Cayman Brac that produces between 300 and 600 gallons of water, whether it's from salt water or brackish water, it doesn't matter. So again, we'll be able to restore basic essential services. We'll be able to bring in communications equipment so that the local authorities that have had their communications infrastructure devastated will be able to bring in that equipment as well as an initial thing just to get them back up and running. So those are just some of the things. Obviously then we go to a secondary phase, would be able to start helping victims or remote areas evacuating from areas that have been hardest hit. And that could be through our aircraft doing rescue hoist operations. So we would send a line down with a rescue specialist. He would either take care of a patient on the ground, put them in the litter, and bring them back to the aircraft and take them to the nearest hospital or field hospital that's been set up.
Okay. And speaking of this type of situation, we do know that on Saturday here in Grand Cayman, there's a military plane that came in from Colombia. This is it at the airport here in Grand Cayman, or in Roberts International Airport, to pick up some of the cargo, relief cargo that has been collected from donations. So there were a number of persons who, church organizations and others, who since the last storm have been calling, this is for San Andres, Providencia, and Catalina, which I think Providencia got hit the worst in terms of the structural damage. Some 98% of their buildings were damaged. So this is the Colombian military plane that came in. There was some talk about them coming in earlier, but they finally came in this weekend on Saturday, and they were able to load up and take, whatever donations people had available to send to Colombia for those islands that were hit the hardest with the last storm. So I think it's important to recognize how, especially when it comes to disaster relief efforts and disaster management, that we've been in a similar situation where we have needed the assistance of others. Hurricane Ivan is a prime example of that. There was a Navy vessel off of the coast waiting for the storm to pass, and quickly was able to get us some assistance. Of course, we are still a UK territory or overseas territory. And so that assistance in the first couple of days can really be a lifesaver and in so many different ways to the people. So Melanie has a comment here, I think, saying that objections are raised due to cultural and natural significance. It's rather ironic that you're building a storage facility to mitigate natural disasters when the lost island is considered the same. I urge you to give back and contribute to a national trust land banking fund to offset the loss. Now, tell us a little bit about some of the specific objections, because obviously this becomes a matter of public record because it would have been discussed at the CPA, the Central Planning Authority meeting. And we do know that the National Trust, I think, was one of the objectors, as well as some residents in the area. How do you respond to Melanie's comment, or just generally speaking about how you tried to mitigate the concerns of people who were objecting?
Yeah, sure. So we actually reached out to the National Trust when they contacted us about the site. And as we did in our research, we carefully checked if any of these sites were listed under the National Trust as a culturally significant location. And unfortunately, this site was not listed as a culturally significant site. And so from that perspective, when we reached out to them, we also asked, do you have an alternative site? And unfortunately, the National Trust was very wonderfully good with us. They just said, we don't have an alternative site. There was mention of a quarry that was near the fire station, and we actually assessed that location, but it was deemed unsuitable because it was so close to other houses, within about 50 feet actually. So that site, just on those grounds alone, we decided not to use it. There are other circumstances around that site that wasn't make it a suitable site during the location to the firehouse, getting access to the runway and etc. But that site was not available for sale, and further, it was deemed not an operational site. The other complaint that a lot of people had made in the planning conference was the noise. And this one was a little bit difficult to answer because we're not sure how you can complain about noise when you're built next to an airport. I mean, the airport is an international airport that has large aircraft and small aircraft operating there throughout the day. So again, we didn't really consider the noise as an issue because we're no different from any other private aircraft or commercial aircraft operating from the airfield.
Okay. All right. So we've got questions coming in. And as you will appreciate, most of these questions are coming in by way of private messaging. So let me read some of those for you. And just a reminder, folks, that you can always send us your questions. Sometimes you're shy, or sometimes you just want to remain anonymous. So 324-1612 is the WhatsApp number. Emailing during the show is a little bit more tricky because I'm not technically, or I shouldn't say technically, but I'm not normally checking email during the show, but I do keep an eye on the WhatsApp messages. So the first question that has come in, it wants to know, how is your project going to be funded? And let me just read another question in relation to that, because I think what people are interested in is whether or not the Cayman Islands government is going to be footing any part of your bill. Are you a privately owned entity, or do you have any affiliation with the Cayman Islands government or any other government other than them being a client of yours?
No, we have no contract with any government agency. The Cayman Islands government is not funding this operation in any shape or form. It is completely privately funded. So there's no discussion at all that we will be supporting, the government is supporting us financially. And remember, our business model is actually a regional business model. It is not just for the Cayman Islands, it is for the entire region. If we were looking at the Cayman Islands as their only business client, this would not be a feasible project.
Very good. All right, let me just, there's some more questions in here. Let me just see here. Someone wants to know what your business plan is in terms of where revenue is going to come from for this particular facility. I mean, I think the question is it that lucrative to actually build a hangar on Cayman Brac? Like, how much business are you going to get in the region? Is this a new expansion of your existing business line, and you've done the research to say, yes, this is lucrative for us to be positioned in the region, and Cayman Brac is the best location? Have you had some leads already? I guess people just want to know why.
Yeah, it was a very simple thing for us. At the end of the day, when I first came to the Cayman Islands with my family for a holiday, I've been involved in the aviation industry for 20 years. Mm-hmm. What was astounding to me was when I did arrive in the Cayman Islands, and really just being the sort of a business person that I am, realized that the region didn't have search and rescue capabilities, at a high fidelity, that is. And they didn't have, a disaster management capability for the region. Now, individually, each country has its own disaster management plan and resources. Some is better than others. We're very fortunate here in the Cayman Islands to have the police air wing to be able to provide support in disasters, but other countries aren't so much. So when we looked at that, we realized there was several opportunities. Obviously, disasters don't occur every day, thank goodness. But at the other side of the spectrum, medic evacuations do occur. They do occur in South America and in every country in the Caribbean. And there's not a designated support network for that. And then on top of that, because we've got an amazing team here that's been stood up and will continue to grow. There's other countries that are still trying to what we call stand up their search and rescue or medical evacuation companies from a government perspective. So they could be our prospective clients in the future.
Mm-hmm. So as of now, the Cayman Islands government is not a client of yours?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And someone else wants to know if you'd be giving them any sort of preference in terms of if we had a disaster here. I'm assuming they could certainly retain your services, but would they get any sort of preference because of your location for you to be able to assist?
That'd be really appropriate to answer at this stage, but I think at the end of the day, we're here to support if we're requested. But the Cayman Islands government is exceptionally good at this. I don't think they're going to need our support in an event of a disaster. If they called and we were available, we would certainly assist wherever we could.
Okay. Very good. All right. So let me just see if there's any other questions here that I've missed. The land that you're using, is that privately owned land or is that government land?
No, it is privately owned. Daggaro purchased that land from the landholder. And we looked at both government-owned land as well as other privately owned land. But unfortunately, this was the only one that met all the requirements from the Cayman Islands Aviation Authority to the Airport Authority and the government in general.
Okay, so I think that answers that question. And I think we've also answered the question about who's contracting your services. Is it for the most part governments that tend to use, especially the disaster management? Is that normally governments that will utilize you for those types of things?
It's actually it's an interesting dynamic there. Both private, let's take, say, the Deepwater Horizon disaster that happened in the Gulf a long time ago. That was actually funded initially. The response was funded by FEMA. So they contracted all the American companies to respond. But at the end of the day, the oil companies paid for the majority of that bill. And insurance companies also pay these bills. So for instance, a medical evacuation, a lot of people have medical insurance that includes evacuation. So sometimes you'll see that insurance companies will pay a private company like ourselves to conduct the operation of bringing someone back to their home country. That is a very common thing that happens. But again, this region doesn't really have an organic, or what we say, a local capability to assist. So they have to bring in resources, generally from the United States, that can take many hours to get here or into another country to support that.
Okay. Just reading a few more of the questions and then we'll go to people who are actually on the live stream. Right. So a lot of people are wondering, again, just from a cost perspective, they kind of feel like there has to be some pecuniary benefit or some contracts already lined up in order for you to invest money in purchasing a land and setting up, the hangar facility. But you're saying that for the most part, it's in anticipation of future contracts potentially coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is my, I think, fourth or fifth startup that I've done around the world. We go through an extensive due diligence process to identify areas of interest and prospective clients. With that, you obviously got to have a capability or a service to offer. This is a big area. I mean, we're not talking, 50 miles, 100 miles. We're talking hundreds of miles of area of customer base, but of risk. If we look at search and rescue or medical evacuation, the distance here are immense, and hence why we've looked at the aircraft that we have, and we've spoken about that. But again, when you look at these startups or a new business venture, you have to correctly budgetize the overall cost and then the return. We're quite aware of where our options are and what revenues there is, and we feel confident this will be a success.
Okay. So folks, don't worry. I think Daggaro's got it locked down in terms of their money situation. Quick question. Contract ISR services. What is this? This looks like surveillance?
It's really an industry term. This has been something that aviation companies refer to all the time. And I noticed actually on your website the other day, someone was looked like oil going into the ocean. Contract ISR is it's intelligence, it's information. So oil monitoring, environmental monitoring is something that I've been involved in the past. Ships may dump oil ballast into the ocean and it affects country A. They want to know who did this. So there's ways of doing that, whether it's an aircraft providing maritime surveillance or et cetera, to protect fishing zones or even oil slicks. So this is that whole part of the business side.
I see. Okay. Interesting. So Jeffrey, I believe that your question has already been answered. in relation to the Cayman Islands government receiving a special consideration for relief or emergency services. Jenny wants to know if you're going to be offering helicopter lessons or courses to become a certified pilot. Now, I did see that on your website, there's also a bit there about an in-house training division.
Correct.
Explain to us what that is all about.
Absolutely. So again, this refers to those prospective clients out there that are trying to increase their capabilities to offer their own country's capabilities, such as search and rescue, medical evacuation, all these areas. These are very specialized skills. These are not something that you can buy a helicopter today and say, right, I can do search and rescue, I can do medical evacuation, I'm good.
Right.
This requires a very specialized skill set. So from the training perspective for Daggaro, we would be offering those prospective clients that capability to increase their own capability, whether that be learning how to hoist persons from the ground to the helicopter, whether it be learning how to do a search pattern in a search and rescue effort. All of those things are very important factors. As for the question about will we be offering helicopter lessons and courses, no, we will not. The UH-60 helicopter is a very complicated aircraft. It requires many thousands of hours of specific training in it. And it's certainly not a helicopter you would be taking a first-time pilot in to learn how to fly.
Yes, you'd want an experienced pilot probably.
Yes.
Sitting in the cockpit there. A few more questions. So Shirley says, I'm wondering how this project is funded and how we as a country benefit versus how Daggaro benefits. It sounds like a wonderful humanitarian cause, but someone somewhere must be getting some financial contribution and benefit as hurricane season is 6 months. What gives the rest of the year? Sorry for thinking along those lines, but I am one Caymanian that is learning to listen to everything with eyes wide open. So it's obviously not just hurricanes that you would be offering relief services for. What are some other examples of how your services, specific to the disaster management, how else could those services be utilized?
So if you just look at disaster management, one of the big things that a lot of countries have quickly realized over the years, or the decades, is that training is everything. Coming up with realistic scenarios to train for a Category 5 or other disaster. We're seeing in Southeast Asia, tsunamis going through. We've seen hurricanes. We've seen earthquakes, all of these different scenarios. So coming up with realistic training scenarios to train for hopefully the event that doesn't happen in the future or doesn't happen is one of the key elements. We have, again, an amazing resources of very skilled disaster management experts that have actually coordinated disasters all around the world. So coming up with that training exercise is one of the best things that you can do to prepare for, hopefully, the event that never happens. We've talked about medical evacuations. That's another big line for us to work with. And again, we've talked about training as well. So our real 3 key areas to take away here is training, medical evacuation, and disaster management.
Okay. All right, Shirley. So hopefully that answers your question in relation to that. We've got Aliana, who's also here, and he says, morning. In the case, this contract, I have issues with other than it being private and not government. I'm not quite sure I get that part, Aliano. Regulate, but that par for the course here in Cayman. On the other hand, once it's vehicles of flight, then butter me up because it's all good. Okay.
I think I can answer that one. I think the concern may be that this isn't a government entity such as the police air wing here in Cayman. We are still highly regulated. We fall under the control of the Cayman Islands Airport Authority, the Cayman Islands Aviation Authority. We fall under the UK security protocols. We fall under all these different things. So it's not like we are a bunch of cowboys operating these aircraft as we see fit. It's got nothing like that. It is a very, very highly regulated area. Just like any other commercial airline, it's the same.
Okay. All right. I hear a little bit of a English accent in your voice. Is that correct?
Well, actually, originally I was from Australia, but
Oh,
I've
okay.
worked and lived around the world, so the accent has gone different ways depending on where I've been living for.
Right. Okay. What are some other locations, Miles, that you have hangar facilities set up? Give us an idea of where else.
Okay, we have a Switzerland office,
Okay.
and that was actually chosen specifically to support the helicopters. A lot of the spare parts and other equipment that comes from Europe, we need to be able to work in 2 different time zones and be able to facilitate those orders to support down here. Swiss is our primary head office, which will expand eventually. But Cayman is our operational office as we bring the resources to the island.
Okay. And so your corporate office is located here, right in Georgetown,
Correct.
in Central Town. Now, how many years in the planning was this project? I bet this was at least a couple of years.
Yeah, about 2 years. We're going. Yeah, I suppose if you look at it, about 2 years. But again, I suppose I've done this a lot of times, and it was a quick scenario for us to make the decision on once the due diligence done was to kick this off. But obviously, we're still in the very early stages. We still have to get various other aviation permissions to be granted. The helicopters have to arrive, have to be certified and registered under the Cayman Islands government. And when I say Cayman Islands government, that is the Cayman Islands Airport Authority and Aviation Authority. So they still have to be authorized under the Air Operating Certificate for a commercial operation. So it's still got a little way to go.
Okay. Let me just see. I do have a few other questions coming in. So Walton, your question has been answered. Good morning, Louis. Louis is joining us from Detroit. He says, good morning, Sandra and CMR Massive. Johan is here, and Johan wants to know whether or not you'll be using drones. And is the facility for flying drones as well? So are drones part of your rescue services and what you do?
No, drones actually, I like to refer to drones as unmanned aerial vehicles because drones are sort of the things that you see that you buy on Amazon and etc. But an unmanned aerial vehicle could be used in a search and rescue capability, but due to the distance and the endurance required, that would have to be a very, very large aircraft to do so. And at the end of the day, unmanned aircraft can be efficient in certain applications, but for a search and rescue, the cost benefit of either buying an unmanned system of that size and employing it here would be far cheaper just to buy a normal fixed wing aircraft.
Okay, Johan, that's asked and answered. He also wants to know if there'll be any employment or training opportunities available for Caymanians. I think he's answered this already. In terms of the technical skills that are required to use their helicopters. But will you be looking to hire anyone locally, do you think?
Absolutely. Our local engagement process is actually one of the significant parts that the government here was interested in. We're obviously standing up a new aviation aerospace industry in the islands. That allows Caymanians to be exposed to things that they wouldn't necessarily be exposed to, whether that be IT side of that, communications, whether it be aircraft side of the house, whether that be maintenance, whether that be handling, logistics. All of these will be doing a recruitment drive next year, early next year, to find the relevant candidates on the island that may be able to either take an internship or if they already have the existing skill sets, be employed directly by the company.
Interesting. All right. So Johan also wants to know if there's any plans to do anything more on Grand Cayman other than a corporate office.
Not at this stage. The end of the day, Cayman Brac's location, being an international airport, and the geographic location is where the aircraft will be based predominantly. If we need to reassess that, then that's a whole different scenario that we haven't really got into at this stage.
And Amanda is asking, would you ever foresee using the Cayman Islands Regiment at certain points?
I don't know about that. There'll be various things that have to be discussed if that ever comes about. The Cayman Islands Regiment is just standing up. They have a lot of things to worry about besides, incorporating helicopters into their operations. And again, as we've already seen before, the Police Air Wing is already providing that assistance to the Cayman Islands Regiment.
And Cassidy is asking, going back to the question of training, why not train so that they can learn the technical skills? I don't think he said that training isn't necessarily an option. I think he's just said that an internship would be possible, but they need people to come on board with probably a certain level of skill set already. And it's just the nature of the business.
The pilot side of the operation,
right?
Again, we are very the Cayman Islands Aviation Authority has to review and accept all our pilot candidates. Nearly all of our pilots, if you look at that, I've got in excess of 4,000 hours on this type of aircraft, very specific, both day and night operations. This aircraft is a complicated aircraft. It actually takes a crew of 4 persons to fly the aircraft and operate it. So, it's not something that we can take a person straight off the street and start training him on this aircraft. It's just not possible. Flying at night over water is an incredibly dangerous flight operation. And so we have only selected the very, very best candidates to ensure safety and discipline and success at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen, just as you were talking about that, I was kind of thinking of the situation with Kobe Bryant. Obviously, that was a very different aircraft, but even an experienced pilot who doesn't understand the risk that they are undertaking in terms of weather conditions and so on, low visibility, whatever, could be putting the lives of their crew and potential passengers at serious risk. So Sherry Ann is of the opinion that that's going to just mean more work permits. But I certainly do understand where Mr. Miles is coming from, and that there are just certain skill sets that, I mean, yes, everybody starts from somewhere in terms of learning, but if you're an ongoing operation, you're not a training school. You may have certain aspects of your business where you can do internships and so on, but people are in the business of making money. Did we miss the memo on that, folks? I'm not saying that training may not be something that one could consider, but I also think even in less technical jobs, you hardly want people who want to train for retail. I mean, let's just be honest here. You can't expect a specialized industry like this to be all about training any and everybody who wants to get trained, because that's not really the business that they're in.
I think
so the training that they offer.
Oh, sorry. No, apologies.
I was just going to say, I'm going to put a link here in the chat in terms of the training that they offer, because it does fall under several areas. They talk about technical training. That would be more like the mechanical staff, maritime patrol, ISR, aeromedical services. And, I suppose if you're interested in those things, you can certainly contact them. Then they've got professional training, leadership and management, and they do have mentoring and partnerships that might be possible as well. So check out the website, folks. And if you want anything more specific than that, maybe you can contact Miles directly. Louis says, I could join his maintenance team, 10 plus years of experience in aircraft maintenance, fixed and rotor wing. Well, there you go.
So we'll be doing a recruitment drive next year and reaching out to hopefully people that are on island. And I'd also like to point out, we've actually had several Caymanians that are actually living and working overseas in this exact field who have contacted us to say that they would love to return to the island and work for the company. So we're certainly not discounting anyone that is Caymanian to support the operation. The other thing is, don't always believe that just because we're flying a helicopter, there isn't a lot of people behind making that operation a safe and viable business. So there is a lot of opportunities for Caymanians, if they wish, to join the company when the positions come up. It's not just pilot jobs. Pilots are just the one or two jobs that are there. There's a whole logistical side behind this operation that requires local support, and we're very happy to be engaged with the Caymanians on the island to support them and hopefully gaining access to what we're doing here.
Now that you've got planning approval, what's your time frame to actually get the hangar built out, fitted out, and ready to start operating?
There's still a significant engineering process that we have to go through with planning to get the final tick to be able to put facilities up. And I actually wouldn't even be able to tell you that timeline. Our hope is to be up and running in some capacity, whether we even have the facility up or not by next hurricane season. And we're just going to work through those processes.
Okay. Cassidy says, overall, sounds like a good opportunity for the Cayman Islands. I'm sure everyone will be watching to see that the company offers what it promises. Louis says, good opportunity for those who are interested to get technically trained in the aviation industry. And of course, we'll be keeping a keen eye here, Miles, on what you've got going on. Do let us know about the recruitment drive so that we can get the word out there and advertise that, because we've got over 45,000 followers on social media alone. So I think we could certainly help to spread the word. Let me just have a quick perusal about some other comments here. So someone else was asking the drone comment, which you've responded to. Someone has said, bearing in mind that under our development plan, all development must be beneficial to the economy of these islands and the welfare of the people of the Cayman Islands, and must be respectful of the relevant environmental concerns. What would he say is the benefit to this country of having a facility of this nature in the Cayman Islands, bearing in mind that he has said that the operation is aimed more at regional operations than local ones?
Well, that's a really easy thing. So, obviously, we have a capability both in the event of something going wrong that we can help out in, if requested to do so. But I think the biggest benefit to the islands in general is the educational side of the place. We'll be reaching out to schools to see if we can assist in STEM-based projects, mentorships, internships, and then obviously hiring of jobs of local Caymanians to join the team, whether they're trained or untrained. There's jobs that we can do both. So I think the benefit is a completely new industry. Now, obviously, when that industry is stood up, there's a lot of external benefits to the islands. So, for instance, as we stand up and have more personnel based within the Cayman Islands, there's other industries that benefit, whether that be tourism, whether that be just the cost of living on the island through using the services of the island and paying for those services. There's all these other flow-on benefits to a business like this being stood up in the islands.
Okay. All right. That sounds pretty good, folks. Any final questions for Miles? I've got to cut the show a little bit short today because I've got to head out to court. There's a number of cases that I'm following closely. Olivia, sorry. I wasn't supposed to, I think this is supposed to be an anonymous comment, but someone is just inquiring about the sound pollution related to the helicopter for such a small island such as Cayman Brac in a quote unquote residential area. But I think you said this is like almost at the airport, right? So
yeah, we're actually connected to the main runway in our planning permission. So again, the argument about noise, I understand the objections of the local residents that have homes in the vicinity of the airport, but they're built next to an airport. It is an airport, and jets go in and out there all day, all night within the airport's authority, and we're no different from any other aircraft that may go in and out. If you want to compare us to a 767 landing at that airport, or a 737, or a Gulfstream, or a Cessna Citation, you'll find that our noise signature is much less than those.
Okay. All right. Now, you mentioned that you're going to keep like generators and other things. Where are the aircrafts actually going to be?
They'll be in Cayman Brac.
Okay.
At
So
the
they're at the hangar.
hangars are large,
Mhm.
and we've got a certain amount of space there. So this equipment's it's not like we'd have 20, 40-foot shipping containers. No, it's very small. Everything's very small. It's man portable. It can be loaded onto the aircraft and taken to the location.
Okay. One or two aircrafts, or how many aircrafts will be at the location?
One initially, we'll get to
Okay.
probably 2 aircraft based there. And to give you a concept of how much these aircraft can lift,
Mhm.
I think there was a picture you put up earlier of an aircraft lifting up some equipment. We can lift up to 8,000 pounds of equipment under that and transport it to a location. If we take, say, when the dump caught on fire, we can put a water bucket, and that means we can drop nearly 8,000 pounds of water almost in a continuous operation. So, that's just one application, but the cargo, whether it's cargo or water, it's the same thing to us.
Mhm. And just to clarify, someone is asking about a helicopter they saw last week, which I think that helicopter actually belongs to Uncle Dart, as we affectionately call him. But some people are thinking that that was your helicopter, but it didn't look like a rescue helicopter.
No, that's an Augusta AW139. That's not ours.
Yeah. Okay. Not that most of us looking at it from a distance would probably know the difference anyway, but I'm glad you've got the technical knowledge and keen eye. Walton says only concern is if the location is above sea level. Now, what do you do if we have a natural disaster here? So say, heaven forbid, that we have another Hurricane Ivan coming in.
Mhm.
What's the plan for that aircraft? Do you move that offsite to another location, or how does that work?
Okay, so the aircraft hangars are Cat 5 rated. So all the equipment and resources would be pushed into there. If the event that we thought that the helicopters were being at risk, we would move the helicopters off-site to a safe location, and they would be laying in wait for when a hurricane passed, we'd be on site. So to give you a concept of what this aircraft can do, we could travel to, as an example, let's say Jamaica wasn't going to be hit by the hurricane. We fly over to Jamaica. We can travel up to 150 knots, give or take, which is about, if my maths is correct, about 280 kilometers an hour. So we can move to that location, wait till the storm comes, and then fly directly back and provide assistance on the ground. Our facility then would have all the required equipment. We'd have mobile refueling capabilities. We could bring the water purification systems to bear. We could install communications, help out wherever we were asked to help out.
Wow. Okay. Well, that sounds very interesting. Miles, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the program with us. I know that a lot of people just had general questions, and I'm glad that they were able to ask those questions. And certainly, I think you've been frank in clarifying them for us. Keep in touch here in Cayman Mall Road. We like to just give the information to people. There's no need to, in my opinion, hide anything. Even though you're a private entity, I think people did have concerns when they heard this story about a base being set up on Cayman Brac. It sounded quite interesting, to say the least. So good luck to you and your team, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you in the future. Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify a few things too. We appreciate that. Okay, awesome. All right, folks, let's give Mr. Miles New Love, again, I love the name, a warm CMR welcome. This is his first time on the program here, the cold, hard truth. I think you got it cold and hard this morning, and hopefully there's not much more to say at this point. Walton agrees. He said, good information, good show today, Sandra. Thank you so much, Walton. And we appreciate it. And Mr. Miles, you do have a wonderful day. Same to you. Thank you. All right, folks. So that's all she wrote in terms of that. But like somebody else said, we will certainly, everything sounds promising. I think it was Cassidy that might have said this, but we will definitely keep an eye on the situation. And you guys know, if anything's going on untowards, we will certainly hear more about it. So that's how the cookie crumbles. All right, folks, it is straight up 9 o'clock. I do want to get to court Thank you so much, Cassidy. Really appreciate that this morning. And let me just wrap up a few final thoughts on the breach with Aaron and that whole situation. I noticed that some of you were saying that, yes, he should have definitely been named Jackass of the Day. I hope that for young Aaron, he's only 19 years old, that at the end of the day, this is a learning experience. They have warned him for prosecution. And what that means is, I know when people hear the word warned for prosecution, they're like, what the heck does that even mean? It means he's going to court. And it means that he will certainly be facing some consequences for his actions. Now, we reported on last week, I think it was Thursday, that the government has announced, or that might have been Friday, but the government has announced that they will be appealing the last decision of the court as it relates to Skylar Mack and Ramjeet. Magistrate Hernandez gave them a slap on the wrist, gave them community service, and they have to pay for their quarantine facility now that they have been moved to a government facility. Most people felt like that was woefully inadequate. I certainly agree that it was. And so the Crown, the DPP's office, the director of public prosecutions, has agreed to appeal that decision. And that appeal is happening today, folks. That's why I got to get to court, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the courthouse. I had to print off the cause list because there was so much. This is just grand court for this week, and some of the bits and pieces for today. So there's a number of grand court hearings. So I got my little highlighter so I can go through and highlight which of these are important. So today in courtroom, this is criminal division at 10 o'clock, Justice Chappelle. Actually, they've got it slated for 1:05 p.m. is going to be hearing the Skylar Mack and Ramjeet matter. So I'm guessing that that's the appeal already. I mean, it seems fast, but you know, they can fast track things when they need to. And obviously Skylar is here for probably another couple of days or whatever. So they probably want to handle this as quickly as possible. So that's at 1:05. We've got Jeff Ryan Scott. He's supposed to be having a sentence handed down. This is the young man, as you guys will remember, who has family on the Brac. And he was involved in, I don't know which, I think this particular indictment would have been the young girl. Remember, he was involved in indecently assaulting a young girl or something, but basically having sex with a minor is what happened, a child under 16. And there were allegations that he had given her some sort of drug substance to keep her all weekend, as some people have alleged his sex slave. So we're keeping an eye on that case. I'm actually in court today for myself, but I think it's going to be put off. It's supposed to be for the disorderly conduct that was a protest in West Bay. And Magistrate Foldatz is supposed to be handling that, but he actually wanted to wait until my grand court case, and that's the one with Matthew Leslie, and the harassment that I was found guilty of. I'm harassing him with the truth. That case is tomorrow morning at 9:30. So it was supposed to be last Thursday. I was going to get a verdict. Seems the judge was really busy. So now it was put off until tomorrow morning at 9:30. So folks, if you want to come out and support, please do. That is actually going to be, let me tell you the location of that one. Give me one quick second here. So tomorrow, oops, I think I passed Thursday. So tomorrow at 9:30 in courtroom number 3. And that's the one that when you go into the main courthouse, it's like all the way down in the back. So do come out, folks. Lots of other interesting cases, even in the civil division. There's one here with CUC and Neville Faulkner. I think they're suing him for stealing electricity. Sometimes I don't always get to go and hear the civil cases. Like there was one last week with the former president of CNB. Remember Mr. Orman Williams? He was suing CNB for a whole slew of things, and that was in court last week, but I didn't get to go see that, so I'm not really sure how that really panned out. And of course, there's the ongoing murder trial before the Honorable Justice Richards, this is Cheryl Richards, she was former head of the DPP, with the banana incident where the Sri Lankan guy was killed, the Crown alleges, at the hand of 3 young Caymanians. So there's a lot of things on the list, folks. Very interesting cases this week. It looks like it's going to be a pretty busy week. And then in summary court, there's a number of cases here that we're keeping an eye on. Most of them are mentioned. So Wayne Belafonte Jr., he's got a bunch of drug charges that he's in court for, damage to property, assault, causing actual bodily harm. There's still people showing up in court, believe it or not, for breaching curfew. And what I find so interesting about the most recent curfew breaches is most of them are getting a slap on the wrist, and people who breach curfew earlier, are having to pay fines. And it's sad because some of them start crying in court because they didn't realize the seriousness of the breach at the time. And then we have Skylar, who gets community service. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we will definitely be following up on it. Jeff Scott is also in summary court today for the wounding charge. So that is the one now. Yes, that's 2020, so I'm correct. So he'll be getting sentenced this week on the one with the young lady. And then his other one is moving through the court system. But this is where he actually cut the throat of his friend during a drunken night of, I guess they were partying or whatever. And I'm shocked that the charge is only wounded because I actually saw the photos of the guy's throat. And in my opinion, anytime you cut somebody's throat, that is attempted murder. Like seriously, you are trying to kill that person. But anyway, the charge is wounded and it is what it is. And we will be keeping an eye on that for you. Lots of DUIs. And the other interesting case that we are keeping an eye on is the Salvin Sinon Caballero. This is the guy with the indecent assault on a female. I don't know how they decide what offenses to charge people with, but this is the guy who he has, let me tell you how many charges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 charges. 6 of those are indecent assault on a female, and 1 is gross indecency. So this is the guy who was doing sexual things with the child who is very young, 12 and under. Let me put it that way. You guys might remember that we updated you some weeks back. This is him. He's an EMT at the HSA. I'm assuming he still is an EMT at the HSA. They will say that, they can't yet fire him or whatever. And I don't want to say too much about the victim because obviously I don't ever want to disclose who a victim is. But this guy is a real piece of work based on the allegations. As in most cases, victims often know their perpetrators, and they're often people that the family members trust. And all I can tell you is do not trust anyone around your children, ever, because this is a perfect example of how that trust will be breached. So that's this dude, Sylvan. So he's in court today for mention at 2 p.m. I will definitely be walking over to that courtroom to see what's going on with him. So both him and the other guy here, I'm forgetting his name now, that works Cost You Less. I don't know if he still works Cost You Less, but he used to work Cost You Less. They have both been granted bail for basically molesting children, or a child, I should say, to be precise and accurate. So that's one that I'm definitely watching. Lots of reckless and negligent acts. I don't even know what the heck that means. We'll have to get the details on that one. Lots of DUIs in court. Folks, the DUIs and stuff to me are such a no-brainer. Stop drinking and driving. Hand the keys to somebody else, call a taxi, walk, do anything, because you're really taking people's lives in your own hands recklessly. So driving without insurance, there's some theft cases and so forth. So those are a bit more run-of-the-mill, to be honest, but we're going to keep an eye on as much of it as possible for you all. Busy, busy, busy week in court, both for myself personally, as well as the court list is long. Okay, so justices and magistrates are kept extremely busy here in the Cayman Islands. What can I say for such a small community? We have a lot going on. Again, big shout out to Kathy Ann Wiltz. She hosted her Christmas party, her kids' Christmas party this weekend in West Bay. Kathy Ann is running for the district of West Bay Central. And this is part of her team. These are the young ladies that are working in her committee. So big shout out to her. It was a well-attended event. We popped by for a little bit late in the day, and there were still tons of kids there. They enjoyed a visit from Santa, a photo op, and a little gift from Santa, as well as refreshments, a bouncing castle, and some other activities. And big shout out to all of the protesters on Friday who came out for the protests standing against violence, and more importantly, asking our MPs why they have decided to not send a very clear message to Mr. Bush that they do not support violence in any form, but violence in the workplace and gender-based violence is astonishing, and it's a real concern. So, folks, you gotta be very, very careful about, all of those things. So let me just get a couple comments. I have said, and I will continue to say, that the women in particular in the Legislative Assembly, we only have 3, have more than disappointed me, and I cannot in good conscience support any of them for this. So one comment came in, says that he's become intoxicated on his own exhaust fumes. He's a disease which, like cancer, we have no easy cure for, but because we've waited too long to treat it. And he's not going anywhere anytime soon. I warned everyone, even got in arguments with some people, including Alden, Arden, Wayne Panton, Olivier, Johan, etc., all of whom thought that this one man, one vote was the pancreas to the McKeever problem, that the whole one man, one vote initiative was factually flawed because it would create pockets of power that would wreak havoc and destroy our credibility. I wanted that we were promoting entrenched political, why did they throw in this word? Parochialism. Don't even think I got that right. It's like a pariah, which would only enhance McKeever's ability to be reelected and make it easier for other idiots to become elected. Idiots who would follow him and look at what has happened. This wasn't pre-science on my part, just common sense. And worse yet, as long as we have people like him supported by external forces who are promoting their homegrown style of garrison party politics in Cayman, we will go the same way as everyone else in the Caribbean. No wonder all of those rich white people want to create an offshore platform to allow themselves to enjoy the benefits of the Cayman Islands jurisdiction without having to stay here and rub shoulders with us nasty locals. This is a harsh comment, folks, but this is what it is. We need to start calling out Tara, Barbara, and even Juliana, that made me laugh, aka Juliana, to explain why they're sitting there silent, being lorded over by a convicted woman beater. Ask them if they have no shame, no pride, no dignity, that they would allow themselves to be led blindly and silently, like the sheep that they are, by two narcissistic, misogynistic pricks like Alden and McKeever. That was a comment. And I have more or less said that on more than one occasion. So yes, I mean, I've been calling out these women in the Legislative Assembly from day one. it it is what it is. And that person, everything that they've said there, I completely agree with. Anne says women in LA need to step up. They need to do more than step up. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, the only 3 people that came out on Friday, as Miller came out, he was actually going to the ATM machine, but I think he timed it. So he did speak to the group, and he has been the lead voice on this in terms of a vote of no confidence against McKeeva Bush, and at least removing him from Speaker of the House. Mr. Chris Saunders came out, and Kenneth Bryan also came out as well. And so Flashpoint agrees and says Cayman is too small for single member constituencies. We should have a national election. We, Aldo, don't need more than 10 elected officials. Well, I don't think they're going to be reducing them, but, people miss the boat, the opportunity to really think through this one man, one vote system. It was lauded as a system that would mean greater accountability. And it seems now like, as this person rightfully said, what will be created here is Garrison-style politics and people being able to have a stronghold in a particular area. It's really, really, really unfortunate, to be honest. So maybe we need to amend that constitution again. Anyway, folks, I'm going to jettison off so that I can get to court on time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the program. Tomorrow is Tuesday, so we will be Truthful Tuesdays. We'll be talking about a number of other issues that happened over the weekend as well, because there were a few more things I thought that were important weekend announcements and so on that we did not have an opportunity to discuss or to get to. We'll keep an eye on when Mr. Aaron will be showing up in court. He'll probably show up via Zoom, and sometimes they don't pre-alert you in terms of that. A bit of sad news this morning that I can't really go into any details on yet, but we have had someone well-known in the community pass away, but their next of kin has not yet been notified. So we will not be posting any details about that until that actually happens. But just know that as a community, we need to be positive and keep each other and be supportive of each other, especially those who are dealing with a loss during these times. Very, very sad. Tomorrow, this comment will make more sense. And that's all she wrote, folks. So please enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. And thank you always for tuning in and making this your number one podcast spot in the mornings. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.